This is the ZecHub first year anniversary event. Welcome. Today we've got a special guest joining us. It's our founder, Mr. Ian Sagstetter. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here and disappointed that Twitter rugged us, but at the same time, I think being able to turn this into like a bit of a podcast and use a Zcash specific platform is pretty cool. So I'm excited to be on Free to Z and chatting with all of you here. So
Definitely.
Yeah, and hey to everybody in the audience.
Hello, audience. Let me see who we've got. Participants. We have Jay, John, Robmarn has joined us. Dan's here. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. So I thought we could start with just a few questions.
Yeah.
And yes, just some quick questions. Get a good idea of how things began. So yeah, let's start with exactly what inspired you to begin the ZecHub project.
So I think for me, I'm very I've always been the type of person that has to contribute to something in order to learn it. I've never been very good at studying or for example, I was very bad in university, very bad student in university, very bad student in school. So just learning something for a test or learning some type of material has never been quite easy for me. And I struggle with a lot of I struggle with that in this industry specifically as well sometimes, because a lot of it is just technical information you have to study. So when I was thinking of different ways to incentivize, people within the Zcash community to get more involved, I was selfishly thinking about this at the same time of well, what can I do to help myself learn these very complex things? So I was thinking okay, I need to learn more about Zcash because I don't know enough. And then at the same time, I needed to incentivize people to join a community per se. And I was cool, what's the best education source out there that I know? And for me, my favorite education source from the Ethereum space, which is kind of where I was spending my time, buying NFTs, joining DAOs, whatever. Before Zcash, I joined Zcash, as an employee, at ECC. My favorite education source was ZecHub. So it was by, I think it's Eric Noir is his name, Eric.eth, and then Anthony Sassano.
Mm-hmm.
They built this education platform kind of featuring this open source wiki and then a podcast and a newsletter. So I kind of scanned it and I was oh, this is interesting, because I had never seen a Wikipedia with the top right, GitHub wrapper in the corner. Basically saying come contribute to the wiki. So I thought that was really cool. So I thought okay, this is a great way to learn, but it's also a great way to contribute to, the greater ecosystem that you're a part of. So that was kind of the first bit of inspiration. I was how can we incentivize people? How can I learn more about Zcash? And how can we kind of create an entire project around that? So there was a bit of selfish motivation, but at the same time, yeah, there was a community aspect to it as well. So those were the two initial kind of drivers.
That's great. Yeah, in fact, looking at the ZecHub website at the moment, I'm not sure. Can you see the screen?
I can, yeah. And I'm surprised it's up. I thought they sunset it, but yeah, it's cool that it's still live. Yeah, this is my favorite Ethereum education source.
Right. In fact, I think they might have shut it down, but I think they're probably on IPFS as well. Let's have a go.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So just to continue, with our questions. Yeah, I did watch an earlier interview on the Zcash podcast, and you stated that an early focus for ZecHub would be creating simple, accessible educational material, but the primary channel would be for Twitter. So do you think that we should, that ZecHub should stick to Twitter as its primary channel for its material, or do you think perhaps it would be apt for ZecHub to look for other channels?
Yeah, this is a great question. So I think you have to kind of, like, I'm going to explain this kind of weird, but you think of it as like a sales funnel. So in sales, like, let's say you have to close 10 deals for like the year to meet your sales quota. A quota is basically like you have to sell a certain amount of software to be successful. So you have to sell 10 deals, right? You have to close 10 deals. So let's say you close like, I don't know, like 20% of your deals. So then you have to, what's that? 20% of 10 is what, 100, right? Like, no, that's 10%. So 20. So no, 50. So you have to have 50 opportunities to sell and then close 10 of those opportunities, right? So that's kind of like the equation. And then to get 50 opportunities, usually you might have like a cold email campaign where like 1 of every 10 people respond, right? So you have to, for these 50 opportunities, then you have to send out 500 emails, right? So you break it all the way back to like every day, and then you divide 500 emails by like how many work days you have. And you're just like, okay, I have to send this many emails a day to close 10 deals over the course of a year. Basically, that's how like old school sales kind of thought.
Okay.
So like, I kind of view Twitter the same way. Like Twitter is your like sales marketing platform, right? And you're putting out content that spikes an interest in people and drives them to contribute to the community, right? So Twitter is like the shiny thing that you're using as like your messaging board to get people interested in what you're doing, right? And then what it does is it gets people who are super interested, they click on your post, they follow you, and then maybe after like following you for like 2 months, they'll then like go and join your Discord and chat, and then maybe after a month in Discord, they'll contribute to the project and earn some Zcash, right? Let's say that's like the acquisition funnel, right? So the reason like you can really focus on Twitter is because like all of the different mediums of like content that you could possibly create like around a crypto project can then be like sourced back, can be then posted on Twitter. So if you did a podcast, you could do this recording, edit it, and post it on Twitter. You could take a clip of this, post it on Twitter. You can do blogs now on Twitter. You can do threads. You can do shit posts, memes, like all kinds of stuff. So like for me, in the current state, like Twitter is still the best platform in terms of like crypto-centric projects and their marketing strategy, right? I don't really think there's any other platform. I know the Bitcoin community is like on Nostr. I know Ethereum's diving into like these things called Farcaster and Lens, which seem interesting. I know Blue Sky dropped, and that seems pretty cool. But I think still in the current state, like for most people, Twitter is where they're going to go for crypto specifically. Now, saying that, I think like people are, especially online community, they're starting to like fragment in a way, and people are just kind of starting to align with like people they just want to vibe with and talk to. So I do think having like chat rooms and different places to to congregate is important too. So like Discord is like a good place for that. You could probably do a matrix chat. You could probably do like signal groups. You could have like groups within your Discord, like branch off and do their own like signal or matrix chats or whatever. So I think those are like probably the second, like I would say like Twitter is like the marketing side, and then like all of your like other social platforms would have to deal with like day-to-day collaboration and just chilling, because people want like to have like communities online.
Yeah.
And like, how do you do that? You kind of, to stick together, you have to be working towards a goal. And if there's a goal, which is kind of like the contribution piece of all this, right? You have that. So then like you kind of congregate in these chat rooms around those goals. So like to kind of sum that up, it's like, I would still focus on Twitter and newsletters, YouTube, kind of like all the content that you could do that could kind of come back to Twitter, because like all of that content that you're doing could come back to Twitter and be like organically posted on Twitter.
Yeah.
Focus there, and then use that as like your marketing piece that brings people into like the chat rooms where they want to contribute and be a part of the community, and then they kind of just stick around due to the flexibility of the chat rooms and discussions that are available. So that's how I would think about it still. Yeah, and I think you guys are doing a great job of that. Like, yeah, like from what I've seen is like a lot of the content is just like fully educational, branching out into other communities as well, and other like technical implementations of like privacy tools to kind of branch out that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that group that you're targeting. So yeah, I think that's super dope.
And just if anyone's listening or watching in the replay or here with us now, we do have a matrix chat, and it will be in our link tree And we have also got a Blue Sky. I think it's ZecHub.bsky.sky or something, whatever the link
like
is.
social. Yeah. And
dot social.
Sky.social. Yeah.
So if you are interested in even approaching us with a new social network, we're super interested. I think we recently spoke to someone from Leo Finance, and we set up an account there. And so, yeah, super open to any new social networks you might have in mind. And on that point, it's actually fairly interesting. Like someone in the Zcash Discord, like the main Zcash Discord, was wondering, like, how come Zcash, like if you go into the main Discord, there's a decent amount of activity there, people speaking, but there's so many other Discord servers that exist. And it's like, yeah, this is a decentralized cryptocurrency. Not everyone is going to be in the same server. So we're out there. We're just everywhere. Yeah, that was...
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I hope that kind of the communication channels, like from the official like Zcash accounts, kind of emphasize that things like Zcash Global, ZecHub, etc., are kind of like the grassroots communities where people should go. Like all the ambassador programs in ZecHub are like, hey, if you are new to Zcash and you want to be a part of the community and learn about all these things and potentially contribute, like this is where you need to go. I still think the funnel there could be improved. But yeah, I'm hopeful that with ECC's announcement that they're kind of looking to decentralize or give away the social property to the community, then those things can be made a priority.
That was really cool. I think it was very recently. It's the website, wasn't it? The like the Learn.
Yeah, I think Zuko released the blog today. I saw it on Zuko's Twitter. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next question here, and this one actually very important to me personally. It was based on your. You wrote an article all about the ZEC economy. And I would just like to get your opinion on the importance of like a contributor model, like people earning ZEC. How important do you think that is to driving adoption of the currency?
Here we go. I have a lot of thoughts here, so buckle up. Hope you guys brought your yoo-hoos in the milk. So this is the spicy stuff we're gonna get into. So for me, I think it's paramount that you have to have it. You have to have a way for not only like, so for example, like people in the West or a large part of the world, like maybe say 80 to 90% of the world has people or citizens of those various jurisdictions that are able to like access a centralized cryptocurrency exchange, buy Zcash, withdraw it. There's a lot of issues on that. I mentioned that like in a reply to some tweet today that I'm very like hesitant with the way that we're kind of normalizing T addresses and kind of saying that, hey, like all you have to do is like click a button to shield, but the problem is all the wallets in Zcash don't have that shield functionality. Right. So a lot of like I mentioned like myself today, like when I first got into Zcash, I bought on Coinbase and then withdrew to Exodus wallet, and I had transparent ZEC and I didn't even know it. And that was probably like for 3 to 4 months I was holding a small bag of ZEC and I thought it was private and it wasn't. And that's like a massive, massive issue that no one's willing to talk about and people aren't willing to admit because it's somewhat embarrassing. So I think like when you have kind of the infrastructure around centralized exchanges, that is a certain risk in the current implementation of Zcash that exists. And until we kind of fix that risk, I would always argue that the ability to have like an opportunity to acquire Zcash in a different way is probably the one of the biggest things the community could work on. Yeah. So I mentioned 80 to 90% of people. I don't know if that's like the real number of people who could access a centralized exchange, but let's say it's 89% of the world's population. I don't know if that's the real number, but let's go a really high number. That still leaves like a small part of the world or at least a decent sized minority that either can't access a centralized exchange, don't have the documentation to access a centralized exchange, don't have the money to purchase a digital currency spare, like maybe they're just kind of living within their means and they don't have extra funds to buy crypto, and it's also volatile because you can lose your money. And then lastly, there's a group of people that don't want to use centralized exchanges, right? So you have all these different groups, and Zcash, again, in its current kind of, in the current way that it's, you know, structured, is that there's not a real way to like go acquire Zcash as permissionlessly as like the United States like laws allow, right? Because most of Zcash companies are structured in the US, ZecHub, the foundation, like kind of managing ZecHub included. So like you have like certain KYC laws, but at the same time, right, like the permissionlessness is still, you still have like little bits of wiggle room that you can kind of play around with within these laws and still be able to comply. So for example, ZecHub, a great example is like you can earn as long as you kind of clarify that you're not from an FX sanctioned country, you can earn up to $600 of ZEC a year from the bounty pool. And people might think like, oh, well, $600 a year isn't a lot of money, but for some people, that's their introduction to this digital cryptocurrency, and it allows them to earn some of it, interact with it, play around with it without having to disclose their identity, without having to go through the process of onboarding into a centralized exchange, providing their KYC information, potentially getting denied, potentially getting shut down by their bank. Like there's so many variables, right? That I think that are involved here. So I do think, like, to tie that all back, the even fact that we need to have this opportunity to earn Zcash, like, this is super, super important. And I like, and earn it as permissionlessly as possible. Like, let's say you end up having to KYC throughout the entire stack to earn Zcash. You have to KYC to the orgs you're working at. Cool. Your threat model for KYC is a lot smaller then, because you're kind of disclosing your identity to the organization that you're working with, right? You're not giving it to some central database where some junior engineer could hack the system and sell your information.
Third party.
Yeah, you're not giving it to like a third party, so some junior engineer could like hack the system and get bribed to give your information away, right? That's like a threat too. So like, even though like it could be permissioned in a way, your threat model is a lot lower. It's a lot smaller. Not your threat model, but your threat, whatever. Like the people that like how do I explain this? You kind of get what I'm saying, right? Like,
I do.
The possibility for things to go wrong is smaller because you're within like a smaller trust circle, right? You're not trusting some big conglomerate. You're trusting like a local, smaller group of people. And the other side of it is that like if you have like a bounty program like that ZecHub has, you're redistributing the block reward. So ZecHub, like attack surface area, thank you. That's what I was trying to say. But like you have this bounty program, so you get all these block rewards from that's distributed from ZCG, from ZCG to ZecHub, right? So there's a distribution downwards. Yeah. And then you have this bounty program that further distributes and decentralizes the ability for people and access for people to earn Zcash. So like, so you have this one problem you're solving for is like you're making it either permissionless or almost permissionless or permissioned in a way that you feel comfortable, right? So you have that side of it. And then you have the ability to take these block rewards, put it in a pool of funds, and distribute it to even more people. So more people are directly benefiting, or they're being directly rewarded for their contributions to the ecosystem, which before ZecHub did not exist, and before the ZF Minor Grants Program did not exist. It was tied up within organizations, or it was distributed to people who had really, really good grants proposals, which are really, really hard to write, and most people do not have the time or the capacity in their daily lives to do that. So like this idea that also that we make it easier for people to just come in and contribute 1 to 2 hours a week, but still receive some of this, some of the funding via the bounty reward or the block rewards or the DevFund, sorry, like that's super important. So
could I perhaps interject? Do you think that a better model in like, just hypothetically, would you believe that if ZecHub were to receive the DevFund like directly from the protocol, is that a better arrangement? Do you think that's a safer thing? Or because I've been having conversations with the people from Decred, and they have this system where their currency, like within the staking, so of course it's proof of stake, so it is it's slightly different, but they're able to, like, someone could submit a proposal through their like system, Politia, and the payment would be directly to that person. So do you think that's a better, like, organizational structure? Do you think this could be preferable for ZecHub?
So I think there's a couple thoughts there. I think for ZecHub in its current state, I would still think that kind of participating in the grants program or having some type of partnership with organizations that are part of the next DevFund, whether that be receiving a grant or rolling up or whatever, I still think the grants program is probably the best for the next cycle, for like the next year, because I see like ZecHub getting an $80,000 grant this year. I see a future where ZecHub applies for like $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 in 2024 to really build this thing out and kind of scale it, because we're proving that the proof of concept, or not me, but the team working on it is proving that the proof of concept works. I don't think there's any other organization from a community marketing grassroots adoption perspective that's directly driving people to using Zcash as effectively as ZecHub is. And if it's not as effectively doing it, it definitely has the potential to be the thing that does that in the most grassroots way possible.
Another option is that ZecHub becomes entirely independent, sorry. So there is, like, at the moment, we are dependent on, so sorry, Jay in the chat is saying 100% ZecHub is the most effective from all other organizations towards adoption. Thank you, Jay. Well, yeah, just to go back to my thought, what if ZecHub found its own revenue streams? What if we perhaps looked for sponsorships, or if we like played ads, if we had a podcast and did ads or something like that? Do you think that's a better or safer route than depending on the DevFund?
Okay, well, so I'm going to tie this back into the ZEC Economy. I'm going to do my best to do that. So I'm going to address this and then tie it back to the ZEC Economy question. So the revenue streams, in my opinion, are super important because the people at ZCG are great and they're doing a wonderful job. And the people that are currently running for election are great and they're going to do a wonderful job. And the team at ZF administering all of this is doing a great and wonderful job. So I want to clarify that before I dive into this. You are still trusting a group of 5 people there's a helicopter outside, sorry. You're trusting a group of 5 people, and then they are subject to a US-based nonprofit foundation. Like, that's all fine, right? Like, these are great things. There's still a trust element, right? And you want to make sure that your trust element, like I mentioned earlier, with like in terms of like not buying Zcash KYC, but earning it from like a potential like contract agreement with like ZecHub or ZF or whatever, right? They're just different trust models. So like for me, having the ability to support, like, let's say you get $100,000 for operation costs for 2024, you get a revenue stream going, that's one side, and you get 50K from that, and then you get 50K from ZCG instead of being completely dependent on ZCG like the team is this year. You get a little bit more freedom because you can stretch the boundaries a little bit. So for example, let's say ZecHub wanted to rebrand and do a Monero podcast along with like a Zcash podcast, and fork the Zcash Wikipedia and make a Monero one, right? If that was a ZCG project, I don't think everyone would be like super thrilled about it.
No, I'm waiting for Jay in the chat.
Let's say the core team and like the governing body that works alongside the core team, like let's say that everyone wanted to do that, or it was voted to do that. Then if you're only receiving 50% of your funding from ZCG, and you could potentially try to increase the funding that you receive away from DCG and to decrease your dependency, and eventually kind of like not depend on them at all and be fully self-sustainable and just kind of use their money to scale, like then you can do whatever you want. And that's kind of like the thing that I think is super interesting about creating funding models, is that you're decreasing a dependency on an organization that that, I mean, to be completely honest, they've been great to work with, but like in that future state, if you wanted to do something really edgy, like everyone wanted to like band together and do something edgy, like you still have to answer to the Zcash community, because I'm of the opinion that ZEC holders are the ones that fund the Zcash development fund. So, but let's break that back to the Zcash economy, right? So like in the current state, like what I wrote about in that article is like you have Bitcoiners trying to spin up like little localized economies, like a Bitcoin beach in different places across the world. They're trying to spin up like Bitcoin-only economies. You have things like Paralelní Polis in Prague, which is like a Bitcoin cafe where you can all use Bitcoin, stuff like that. Really cool.
And
right?
Townships in South Africa, I think.
Yeah, doing the same thing, right? Yeah. So then you have like Monero, which is like super used on black and gray markets, right? Like because people need a currency to kind of use things outside of state approval. And then you have like Ethereum, which is like people use ETH to like buy NFTs and flip shit coins and whatever, right? Like, and that's great. Like those are like three economies that have different like purposes, and they use a decentralized currency to fund their economies. And in my opinion, Zcash like does not have that. So like, how can we change Zcash to be like, what's the first, like, because it's really hard to go to vendors and be like, hey, like implement this POS system, and that's extremely difficult. And I'm not saying that to like discount the efforts of people working on that. Like that is just a really, really hard job, and massive kudos to anyone working on that. What, in my opinion though, like what you could do is you could just start having people earn it, because when people buy Zcash on an exchange, they view it as like, I'm purchasing this asset, and I hope that the asset increases in value, because who doesn't like to make money? But like if you earn Zcash in a manner where that is the currency being like distributed, it changes from an investment or an asset into a token or a currency with like actual utility, right?
Yes.
Buying and holding shielded ZEC on a wallet offers no utility to the world, in my opinion, in its current state. But earning it and distributing it and using it does. So like what you could do is you could have this model where people earn Zcash, and then what you could also do is create opportunities for people within this model to start transacting for goods and services. For example, like I needed some logos, and I contacted Mine from Zcash Brazil, and I bought her services because she's a designer to make logos. So I bought logos from her. That is an economic exchange. That is a transaction, and we did it with Zcash. And then like you have ZecHub, if you have like ZecHub opens up a store and like a merch store, and it only accepts Zcash. Like we're not doing fiat. Like we're not selling t-shirts for fiat currencies here, because we are a cryptocurrency project. So open up the store, only accepts Zcash. That forces people to start taking part in the Zcash economy. And if you have people earning Zcash, they are much more likely to disperse with that, because they view it as money versus viewing it as something that they purchased and hope it goes up in value. Like, so for me, the economic incentive the economic incentive becomes more of like, let's participate in this economic, like this little economy, versus like the economic incentive is for the number to go up.
Yes.
Which historically for Zcash has not happened. So.
Yeah. So on that point, we are trying. So we've set up a merch store, although we don't accept ZEC. Me and Dismad and Jay, we've been discussing this for some time, probably on like in the order of 2 weeks or something, trying to figure out ways, how can we accept ZEC? We talked to Pitmut, who's developing Zego, the payment processor or payment processing system or invoicing system. I'm not sure exactly what it is. We spoke to him and he said, yeah, we have a production ready piece of software that we could use. But it also came along with like many other questions of, what happens when someone sends us ZEC and like there's no address there, or like, it presented more questions than answers, and it seemed like a insurmountable challenge for us right now.
I have a point. I have an idea here. So like, what if, for example, like kind of a thought exercise for you, right? I bought a t-shirt recently, a Bitcoin t-shirt. And I found the guy on Twitter and I went to his website and it said like pay in Bitcoin and it wasn't working. So I emailed him. And him and I, instead of like waiting for the BTC Pay server to like go back up, we decided to conduct in a peer-to-peer exchange where I sent him Bitcoin directly, and he mailed me the shirt directly outside of the storefront, right? So we did it peer-to-peer. So like for me, like you can't really do that as ZecHub because you're like a US domiciled nonprofit. But what you can do, I think, because you are a nonprofit, is that if you set up the exchange address at as the nonprofit exchange, like not the Zcash address, more rather, as
the donation
address, donation address, people can like send the funds there, and then I'd be curious if you have to pay taxes on it because you're using the funds to fund operations for a public good, instead of like using the funds to like make money, because you're taking all of the funds and redirectly investing back into ZecHub. Yeah. So that is a question for the lawyers. But, I wonder if that could be a solution. And then if not, if like you still have to pay taxes and all that jazz, like you probably wouldn't be able to do it. But like,
you can sell stuff for charity, nonprofit without taxes.
There we go. Cool. So then now the answer is like, oh, we just have to manually do it. And can someone volunteer, or can someone be incentivized via like they get 5% or 10% of like revenue, like of the shirts to like, like make sure that they can, like, it's worth their time to like manually do the orders and process everything, right? Like, because I'll be honest, like we'll open up the store, but like I wonder like how many shirts would actually get sold. Like if you sold 100 shirts in the first like 3 months, I'd be like, that's awesome, right? Like that's so cool. So like I feel like you could probably, if you had someone like working on it, you could probably have someone like manually do that.
Yeah, it's worth a go. Although for the time being, the current proposal, so if I think you can still change your vote because it's still open for the next 2 days. The current proposal does not include ZEC payments. So keep that in mind, everyone, DAO members who are voting. Keep that in mind. So Dan wrote something interesting here. A buyer can also include shipping address in the memo field. And this is something, Zcash does have this functionality that not many people use quite yet. And I'm interested to make like more tutorials on the payment request URI thing. Like if you want to request, let's say 0.5 ZEC, you can design like a QR code that asks for 0.5 ZEC, and it could have like any kind of template for any other information that you can put in there. And so this is I think how we build applications on Zcash, and I think it's like a good entry route. In your opinion, what do you think is the most important aspect that people need to understand or learn about Zcash? What should ZecHub be? Where should our priority be in terms of Zcash specific education?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm giving a talk at ZCon, and I don't want to give it away too much.
Right.
Kind of like on an idea that's somewhat similar to this question. Like, I feel like at the end of the day, Zcash is just a tool, and it's a really good one. Like, if you kind of stripped away all of the complaints I had at the beginning of this discussion with like tatters and centralized exchanges and kind of like the environment that currently exists for Zcash and its current usage, like if you strip all that away and you just have like the orchard and sapling and like payment protocols and like use those, like it is a really freaking good tool, and it is inspired like hundreds of different iterations across the cryptocurrency ecosystem. Like you look at Aztec, they posted a tweet today with like an interview with their CEO, and they're like basically, oh yeah, we basically do this like how Zcash does it, right? Like and the former chief scientist of Aztec was like the person who found the inflation bug. I think it was in, I don't know which poll it was in when they found the Zcash inflation bug, that was the engineer that found that was the one that worked on Aztec and did a lot of like the Zcash stuff at Aztec. Or Zcash style stuff at Aztec. So for me, like, this is an amazing tool and it's inspired so many things, and it's only inspired things because it is amazing. So like, you can say all of those things, but it doesn't, in my opinion, make anyone's life any better if they don't have a use for it. Like, so for example, how can Zcash improve like my day-to-day life? The day-to-day life of other people who are interested in kind of like taking some of their money out of the fiat system and kind of living in this other economy, right? Let's say that's like a subgroup, like part-time libertarians. You have this idea like there needs to be people willing to accept it for goods and services. So this all goes back to like a Zcash economy. Like if this economy, or kind of the ideas that lay the foundation for said economy don't exist, then this entire thing is like basically useless, right? In my opinion, right? And I find that with like any kind of like peer-to-peer cash system. So like, how can we incentivize people? Like, okay, here's the answer to the question. Like, what do you focus on? Like, taking all that information, how do we incentivize people to use it and join it? You do it through your friends and family. You are not going to evangelize anybody on the internet to unbank themselves completely and live off Zcash, or buy like one thing with Zcash a week, or like do 5 shield transactions a week, whatever. You're not going to convince anybody on the internet to do that. I'm sorry. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, you might convince them over the course of 4 years, but like, do you want to wait 4 years for people to get on board? Or do you want people to get on board as soon as possible? And I'm not saying like, go to your family and say like, hey, invest all of this money. Like, walk, like step by step, walk with them. Like, have them, like, for example, where I'm currently staying, if you know where I'm staying in the world, please don't like tell people where I'm staying, but where I'm currently staying in the world, like, I can buy groceries with Bitcoin via Lightning. So like, I am incentivized to use it because I can buy groceries with it, and I think that's cool. And through this process, I'm like kind of planting the seeds with my partner of like, hey, you can actually use like Bitcoin in this kind of scenario. It's not completely peer-to-peer, but it's like cool, right? Because we're stepping in the right direction.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, create materials that people can then take and go to their families and go to their friends and say, hey, I have this like cool magic internet money that's like super freaking dope. Like, we should try to like mess around and transact with it. And then like through that process, like, you start to teach people why it's important and why it's cool. Another great example, I was in Colombia recently and I was with some friends, and I went to a Bitcoin cafe in Colombia, and they didn't have a Lightning address to do payments. So I had to do stuff on chain and pay like 8% fees. And then the experience was like really bad. So I got mad, and then I showed them like a Bitcoin block explorer, and I kind of explained to them, like, if you don't do this correctly, like, everybody can see your entire like financial history, and you can see all the amounts, whatever. And they were like, why the fuck would anyone use this to like, buy stuff? So like,
right.
So like, it's funny because like, through that experience, even though it was negative, I then showed them the value of like something like Zcash, right? Like,
yeah. And by the way, so many people do not realize that Zcash is it's relatively super fast compared to Bitcoin, and it's extremely cheap to make transactions on Zcash. People don't understand that fact, and you know, many of the
I wonder, like, I'm interested in seeing like as adoption grows, like how the protocol would deal with like higher volume of transactions. But I think like the engineers at ECC, and I think ZF as well, have like some really interesting ideas around like layer 1 scaling, potentially like layer 2 scaling. But the core, like, that's the core thing, is like, that was an opportunity where I like tried to use a cryptocurrency, but still like was able to like shill Zcash in a way. But then there's other situations, like if you're around your friends and family and like you can use it. Like, if you go to ZCon, use Zcash. Don't use euros the entire time to like pay people, like to reimburse people or to do whatever. Like, if I go buy you a beer, like, even if like it's on the company card or whatever, or I'm like just getting you a beer just to get you a beer, like send me Zcash. Like, let's do it. Right. Like Michael in Brazil bought me a beer, and I'm like, he's like, you don't have to give him. I'm like, dude, I'm sending you Zcash. Because like that peer-to-peer transaction is like, we have to start doing that. And if we're not going to start doing it amongst ourselves, like we can't expect other people to do it.
Indeed.
Right? Like,
this is exactly the point behind the merch store and accepting Zcash in the merch store. Like if ZecHub isn't going to accept Zec, then who in the world? Like it has to start with us. I think we need to seed the cloud.
And it's like, I understand where like from like an overall high level adoption, right? It's like we need better like developer kits and we need better infrastructure to like have people come and build applications using like the Zcash protocol. And ZEC is the currency to drive value for those applications. Like I totally get that argument. But like the people solving that problem, that group of people is a lot smaller than like the overall group of people that just want to like fuck around and like use Zcash to like buy stuff.
Yeah.
Right? I think there's more community members in the Zcash community versus like really technical engineers that can like solve these really technical problems. So like I understand that overall like adoption across the ecosystem and getting people to really use this is going to be reliant on people solving really big problems at an engineering level and making the protocol easier to build with and kind of decentralizing that. But like the community can still do their little part of like, I'm going to use Zcash like every week, or I'm going to try to do transactions. I'm going to make my friend download a wallet so I can like reimburse him for that beer.
Yeah.
And then kind of like say under my breath that it's shielded, you don't have to pay taxes and stuff. Like,
right.
like it's stupid shit like that where like that kind of can move the needle forward. In creating a user experience at the application level is like we have to figure that out too. Like I know people don't want to hear this, but like Monero.com wallet and Cake wallet, like the user experience, while it can be buggy at times, is like that looks like a mobile, like a modern mobile, like banking
application. Yeah.
So like, how can we kind of take that and then like take the inspiration from their UX and kind of like apply it to what we're doing.
I love that idea.
And I'm not saying the wallet teams at Zcash, like again, like these are smaller teams and they're solving really, really freaking hard problems. Like you're not going to get everything in the beginning, but I think as we kind of like move towards like trying to make this thing a little bit bigger, like can we have better user-facing applications specifically, and the people using those applications, can we have them kind of evangelizing within their local communities?
Right.
Can we have grassroots marketing orgs that are helping these people with materials that they can distribute either virtually or on the ground in person?
I do like that approach. In my imagination, I'm kind of thinking of the grassroots organizations and the community as like the large surface area at the bottom, and we have like the regulatory outreach people and like those like super smart teams at the top, and we're kind of meeting in the middle. And I think that's like a lot of coins don't have that, by the way. I think like many coins like Litecoin, they've got the Litecoin Foundation, but everything else is either community funded or like just completely community driven. Zcash is lucky because we have both the community and this the many organizations which can like reach out to governments and reach out to like people who hold office and like stuff like that. So I think, yeah, having that two-pronged approach, it could work for us.
Yeah, you bring up a really interesting point because like again, there's two groups. It's a two-pronged approach. Like you can't do one or the other, right? Like you can do like people within other communities argue that you can go the completely grassroots option, and I don't know how funding models work in like Monero. I'm kind of familiarizing myself with Bitcoin, but like I'm still not well versed enough to have like an opinion on other funding models other than maybe Zcash and Ethereum, right? But if you look at Zcash specifically, it's two-pronged. It's not one or the other. So like you have the teams working on really big problems, and we're funding them and we're giving them a substantial amount of money via the block reward. But we still need to have like pools of funds that can be redistributed as easily and as permissionlessly as possible through other organizations like the ZF Minor Grants Program, like through ZecHub, through competing organizations to ZecHub. Like all I want is someone to fork ZecHub and build another one and be like, we're not doing what the DevFund, rely on donations, and then do
Love
it
that.
completely peer-to-peer. Like, someone please do that. Like,
Yeah.
that would be the coolest thing ever. Like, so my idea is like
Anonymously.
So like, how can we create these systems like these systems of like distributing money to distribute as much of it as possible in the most decentralized manner as possible as well. Like that's super, like, because if you don't do that, then you get only the one side, a reliance on 4 to 5 organizations and people capable and having the time and capacity to apply for major grants. And I just don't think that is the way to build a decentralized cryptocurrency community, in my opinion.
Thank you. Just one last question before we open to the community. I think some people in the chat might have questions. One more from me, which is, how do we become more resilient? So I think recently, in the past 2 weeks, we've had, I think it was like a Bitcoin education platform on YouTube that their channel got shut down. I think they had mentioned something about KYC. I'm not entirely sure, but we're seeing education platforms similar to ZecHub getting shut down. So what do you think is the best way forward for us? Do you think it's something we need to take too seriously, or how do you feel?
That's a good question. I think ensuring that, again, I'm not super, like, I'm going to sound really dumb here, but like, I'm not well versed in this stuff, but making sure the information is available on like decentralized peer-to-peer storage networks, like, is that like maybe like storing the files to all the information in an organized way on like a distributed system to where like it can't be censored. Like, so if someone wants to access said system, maybe they have to do it through like private browser, like maybe they have to use Tor or something, but like they can find a way to get to the information if they needed to, right? So like making sure the information is like backed up and available in one place, like not in one place, but in a place that people can access it in the event that someone tries to shut it down. So like, I think that's relatively like low lift, and I think IPFS might solve for that, right? I would imagine, right? Like solve for that.
Yeah. Cool.
So that's already taken care of. I think the other side is like building up the decentralized, like, remember that marketing funnel we were talking about? So there was like a customer acquisition funnel and then like a customer retention funnel, or customer, so you had like the Discord and the Matrix chats and all these chats, or Signal chats, or like the customer retention. So like that's where your community is really like kind of managed and taken care of. So put a much bigger emphasis on using permissionless protocols, permissionless messaging chat organization protocols to organize around the cause. Like, I think DarkFi is a great example of having like decentralized permissionless chats, task management systems, ways of coordinating and congregating as a group that's completely permissionless, you can't censor it. And I understand that other groups within like the lunar punk and kind of like crypto anarchist communities are taking their kind of like their models and applying it to their own groups. So like, for example, if someone wanted to look at DarkFi's kind of a tech stack in terms of peer-to-peer coordination, like take that and make a Zcash like version of it. You'd have to be fairly technical to do that, but like that is definitely something that would be worthwhile, in my opinion. Because like, what if, for example, it's a US domicile, so what if like Tornado Cash is based on Zcash code? So like,
absolutely,
the US government goes, lights are off, guys, it's done. Like, what are you gonna do?
They shut down the GitHub anymore, didn't they? Sorry.
Yeah, and like you can't, I don't even think you can work on it. Like if it got like sanctioned, I would have to be like, I would have to like, I don't even know if you can like interact with the groups around it anymore. So
well, that's something we will keep in mind, and we'll probably be working on that in the background to some extent. So thank you. Thanks for answering those questions, Ian. I'm going to open up to the chat. If anyone has, I think we've got 9 people with us at the moment. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. And yeah, me or Ian will answer them. And yeah, just in the meantime, Robmarn sent us this GIF. He's created a special anniversary GIF for us.
You created this?
Robmarn?
He created it?
Yeah.
I'm trying to download it. Let's see it.
He's got it in, he's put it in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah, that's dope.
I'm not going to sing happy birthday, but yeah, just on that point, I don't think it is today. I think it was, you created a Twitter account maybe early June. Did you?
I think the first GitHub commit was, I think, on Saturday. I think it was the 24th.
24th? Okay.
Yeah. I think that's my official, like, kind of official date, the 24th. Come on, Jay, I need you to ask some spicy questions, man. Come on.
Yeah.
I need you to throw something at me.
Guys, ask the questions, drop them in the chat. Who have we got with us? Yogi's just joined. Hello, hello. I'm keen. What do you think about the DevFund extension?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. I actually spoke about this at Monerotopia. I did an entire talk on it, where I basically said, like, the Zcash Development Fund is not only proved worthwhile for the development of Zcash, but it's proved worthwhile for the entire development of the cryptocurrency ecosystem at large. So I think we should probably definitely extend it. Not only if you just, not even basing it on like this success of like Zcash as a cryptocurrency, but like the broader ecosystem using the tech. It's like, it's worthwhile endeavor. I think that extending it, like, you really need to like be critical, and not critical in the sense of like the people behind these organizations, but like critical in the sense that like, let's look at like what Jay's just mentioned in the chat here, the ECC restructuring. Like, for example, I would have been a part of that restructuring. I would have been laid off. It happened 3 months after I left ECC. So I would have been a part of that group that would have been let go. I have very much doubt that I would have been kept on. So like, you look at that and you look at all these people getting let go. And the response that I kind of saw in the community was like, this is awesome. This is amazing. Like, the restructuring and focusing, like, cool, mazel tov, whatever. And I was like, hey, like, we just spent an entire year on all these efforts and like they weren't successful. Like, can we understand why they weren't successful? Like, I felt that like some of the things that I worked on, like, I was hired to like manage a Twitter account. And if you look at all the Twitter metrics, they were all improved by the time I was there. So like that was successful. Like, what wasn't successful? Like, what a part of this like situation where all these people were let go was not worthwhile? And why did they make the decision and to do that? And why did they say after making the decision to like, hey, we're better off for this restructuring? And I'm not saying they're right or wrong. Like, I don't know. I'm not in the executive boardrooms. I was a little kind of affected by it because I would have been a part of that group. And it was like, damn, I dodged a bullet here. And I'm glad I left and I was able to find another opportunity in the space. So like, I was thankful for that. I felt bad for like all my friends that got laid off. But like, when we look at the next DevFund like model, we have to be really, really critical of those types of situations, and not to like say that the people managing ECC aren't doing a good job or whatever. I think they are, and I worked there and I worked with them and I understand how good they are at their jobs. And while I might disagree with them on some things from time to time, like, I still respect them and think they're doing a great job and think that they're deserving of another round of funding. But like, let's have the conversation of like, we all set out these goals, we all wanted to do these things, and if they were not successful, why weren't they successful? So like, let's ask that question. And so I think, yeah, to kind of finish that is like, I think the question was around like, do I think it should be extended? I think it should be extended, but I think that we need to be very critical of the orgs that were a part of the last DevFund and like constructively analyze their performance and say, hey, like, this is what you brought to the table. And then like challenge things that we disagree with and be more vocal about our disappointments and disagreements with people that might have more like social clout within the community, and take on the risk of being ratioed in the forums and ratioed on Twitter. Like it's gonna suck, but I think it's important. But like, are we able to like be critical and kind of make sure that these teams have clear expectations? Can we make their expectations more direct, like so small, like fewer expectations, like what ECC is doing? Is like, here we're going to be laser focused on smaller things. And then can we think of other models like the CF Minor Grants Program? Can we expand that? Can we really put a lot of effort into that to ensure there's more kind of people going to that? And can we, and not just people in Zcash, but people in the broader crypto ecosystem, and can we give programs like ZecHub more money to redistribute funding through its bonding programs? Can the Bootstrap Foundation have its own grants program? Can Shielded Labs have a grants program? Like, can we create more ways and more grants programs to more easily decentralize the amount of funding and the entry level for people having to participate?
Great answer. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
No. That was really good. In fact, just off that point, Zero Darts asked the next question: how do you rate the progress so far on ZecHub? So just in that same lane of like critically evaluating the DevFund organizations, ZecHub itself, of course, we are recipients of the DevFund. How should we be gauging the progress performance of ZecHub?
So I think that it started out, right? Like, I had this very clear vision, like, we're going to build Wikipedia, we're going to do a podcast, we're going to do a news show, and that's it. Like, and we're just going to focus on, I was just going to focus on those things. So when I was like kind of stepping away from it, like, obviously the team, you guys taking it on had different skill sets. Like, I'm very good at like talking shit and like interviewing people. And well, Jason, you're doing a great job here. Like, that was not something that you thought you were going to be doing when you entered the project. So like, you're learning how to do that, whereas that's something I had like kind of more like been more naturally doing for a bit longer, right? So it's like different skill sets came in when you guys took over. So I personally thought that like the content and everything was gonna like take a hit, but you guys are actually doing better. So for me, it was like, it really proved to this this notion that sometimes even if you had the idea, the original idea, you might not be the best implementer of the idea. So with you guys taking over the project, I have seen more community management, more community, participation. I've seen more focus on the grassroots adoption side of things, less focus on trying to be like a media arm, and more caring about like the actual people. And you're creating, maybe the podcast I thought was pretty good, but like the videos that you're doing with Joel and all these different things, like super low cost and super high quality. So like, bang for buck, this is the best investment ZCG has possibly made.
Right.
Now, is it the best investment in terms of like overall value being distributed to the ecosystem? Maybe not, but like in terms of like dollar for value, like 100%. So I think having that title means that the progress is going really well. I'd like to see more community members donate to the project. I know that the price of ZEC has impacted the bounty pool. I'd like the bounty pool to be expanded. I'd like to see potentially offers to people like Joel Valenzuela from Digital Cash Network to do 5 to 6 episodes of a ZecHub podcast, which would cost maybe around $3,000, $2,500, $3,000. Like, can we get the community to fund that so we don't always have to go back to ZCG? Like, I think kind of the next step in progress is figuring out how to scale and bring this type of grassroots movement to more people in an effective way, and then also getting the community more incentivized to see it succeed through donations and contributions.
Very quickly, everyone, if you are looking to find out how to donate to ZecHub, head to zechub.xyz and you should find the Z address, or I think now it's a U address, I'm not sure. You'll find it at the bottom there, and if you click on it, it'll take you to Zcash Block Explorer where you can scan a QR code. We do have a bunch more questions. I don't know if you want to run through them. Robmarn is saying, I would love for ZecHub to be a part of this initiative, which will be of great benefit to the Zcash community at large. I invite you to check it out and any feedback. So you sent us a link. Let's see. what we have here. I'll put it on the share screen. So I can't understand Spanish. You're going to have to help me out. 1 second. So I'm sharing on the screen now. Oh, no, it's in English. For those who don't know me yet, I'm Robmarn Narvaez, active member and collaborator of the Zcash community in Spanish, and Zcash in general. You can see part of my contributions on Twitter. I'm an audiovisual engineer, graphic designer, photographer, adventurer, and technology lover. And I would love to ask for your input to put a global idea into action. So this is a ZCon proposal. A very important point, since the vulnerability of personal financial information Okay, so what is request to buy? Okay, graphics card, RAM. So this is to produce content for the ZCon event. Is that correct? Here's a campaign here. I think so. Thank you, Robmarn. We're definitely going to take a look at that. And the great thing about Free2Z is that, like, right on the page that you're reading, you know, we have his Z address as well. Jace asked a question, what are your thoughts on the Zcash vibe? Why aren't many people attracted to the community? Diagnose it for us.
Is Dan on the call?
He might be.
Damn it. Dan's here. I can't
Yeah, Dan's
give
here.
away too much of my ZCon. I can't give away too much of my ZCon talk. I was just gonna do the talk now. Yeah, I did ask for spicy. So I think the vibes issue is that, like, is a lot of the time vibes is associated with financial incentive, like financial speculation, right? So like people vibe and they want to like be a part of a community because like it's like, oh yeah, like we're all in this together, and when number goes up, things are great. Like look at, like, I think NFT communities are really good. Like the bear markets hit NFT communities really hard because people came in because they were speculating on NFTs. Then some people got burned and then they like fucked off and left, right? So like I think a lot of it has to do with price performance. That's the first thing. And then I think the second thing is, this is going to sound kind of weird, but like I sometimes feel like the Privacy is Normal campaign is like a really, really amazing campaign, and I'm glad to have played a small part in it. And I think Chris Tomia like knocked it out the park with that entire thing. I think, but that campaign really does well in terms of like a reactive situation where you have to like show your moral superiority to morally corrupt entities, like, for example, the US government when they OFAC sanctioned Tornado Cash. That's why the Privacy is Normal campaign went viral. It went viral because Alex Pritzker was put in jail around the same time that the OFAC sanctioning happened. So people were kind of up in arms about that and upset about it, rightfully so. And then when
For 6 months
in jail for 6 months in the Netherlands, that's when the campaign went viral. So it was a reactive case of moral superiority. But the problem is you can only take your moral superiority every so often, right? Like it's being morally superior in terms of like a messaging kind of thing is like really good when you can kind of like shove it in the face of people because they're wrong. So it's like, hey, like we're gonna chill and we're not gonna say anything about Bitcoin's privacy, like potential privacy leaks, until until you can very easily buy a service that associates like a Bitcoin address with a Twitter handle, right? And you can buy it for $9.99 a month, right? We're gonna chill until that's available, and when that's available, we're gonna go down your throat and like tell you I told you so. So like I would hold off on saying that we're better than other projects because we have privacy, like and frame it in a way like make it fun, like bring back the cypherpunk ethos, bring back like kind of the edginess. Like I think the Cypherpunk Zero campaign had like a lot of potential, and I think things like that, like creating like little communities around like NFTs and digital digital collectibles and things like that is cool. Also like merch and doing like online meetups and IRL events and like all these little different things, and focusing it around like the cypherpunk ethos, and focusing it around like just chilling with your friends and having a good time, and then taking that type of energy and bringing that to the public square. So like, don't bring it to the public square like we're better than you because we have privacy. Bring it to the public square of like, yeah, we're like wearing balaclavas and talking about like buying Bibles on the black market and like that, because that's like, and you can make jokes of that. Like I think like I really admire, like for example, the DarkFi team. Like they're doing a really good job, I think, currently of like memifying privacy. So like I want Zcash, like for example, one of the best performing social posts was a simple one-liner on the Zcash account that was like, we built with ZK before it was cool. And people like that because it's funny, and it's like we're memifying this really technologically advanced thing, and we're taking like we took the like, oh, we've been here since the start, and we're just like, it's like, hey, we're shooting the shit and having a joke. That's something you'd say when you're drunk and you have a cigarette in your hand. So like, I think taking the moral superiority, put it in your back pocket, only use it in a situation where it's necessary, and try to create more little communities online where you guys can where people can get together, chat shit, have fun, and bring that same type of energy to the public square. That's what I think would have a lot of good things to like solve the vibes.
Keep it light, and
keep it light. Like another thing is like here's the thing. I am a victim of this, and the reason I'm doing my talk at ZCon of this, I'm not a victim of this, I'm a culprit of this. The reason I'm doing my talk at ZCon and the thing I'm talking on is because I went to Brazil. And I went down there and I did a talk, and I was like, this could be a really valuable tool for human rights. And I've done talks at universities like Zcash and encrypted payment protocols could be super valuable for human rights. And I'll be honest, like I'm LARPing, like I'm being a LARP, and I'm like going on these things, and I'm talking all these words because I've listened to other people talk about their experience, and I'm trying to reframe that in a situation that makes my job seem more meaningful than it actually was. Right?
It was a good talk. It was good.
It was good, but at the same time, like you have to be super critical, because there is we don't know about it, but I would say there's a very small chance that people are like listening to my talk on YouTube and then going and implementing like Zcash and like a human rights use case. What you need to do is like, if you look at the trajectory of all these different things, is like they start in like grayer markets, and they start as like magic internet money among friends. Then they move to the gray markets, and then they move to like kind of like this like people from the gray markets introduce it to people in kind of harsher situations, and then it reaches mainstream adoption. Zcash is taking a different path because it was created later. It was created and launched a little bit later. So like, what it's doing is like you're now in this ecosystem where it's like your main audience are like magic internet friends, and then people who want to like send money like around borders, and then people who want to speculate, right? So like going and trying to always frame the value around the thing that you're building around like a moral superiority argument is like only going to be effective in situations where that's necessary, and that's just not the majority of the time. So like frame the message like and make it useful for the majority of people, and talk about things that are useful to them. And even though that might not be as sexy or might not give you the most likes on Twitter, like do that. And then in the situation, like you need to say the thing, and then if you keep telling more people it's useful and more people use it, and then it will organically move over to the people that actually need it. Like we don't need to do speeches on like we do need to do them, but we don't need to do them all the time. So like I feel like that is some of the vibes stuff I have in my head, and that's kind of some of the things I'll be talking about. Maybe not as strongly because this is like a private room, and I probably ask after that comment not to post the entire thing. But yeah, like that's kind of the idea I have from like just like an overall comms and vibes perspective.
No, I fully agree. And that would be, I suppose, yeah. So, I mean, for everyone who's listening, make that choice. It's entirely your decision. But yeah, let's try and keep it friendly, I think, because we're not just speaking to Zcashers. We're reaching out to other communities. Other communities who have different they have different motives and they have different priorities. And I think something that everyone can agree on is that memes are fun. So let's try and go that avenue. Ian, thank you for joining. Thank you. We've just hit about an hour. We've been on.
Flew by.
Yeah, thank you.
So I guess my parting comment is like thank you to you guys for continuing to build this thing. I never would have imagined that it actually became what it did, and I never, like, when I said like I'm gonna give this away to the community, I like said that like intending to, but also like very hopefully saying it. And then when it actually happened, it was really cool. And it was difficult. Don't get me wrong; it was hard to like give it away because it was like my baby. But you know, gave it away, and now it's thriving, and it's getting to the point where I think it could potentially be extremely instrumental in success or in future of Zcash. So
we are doing our best to keep that baby safe, and yeah, that's why we have the community here, and we're going to be doing such events. Usually we hold calls on Tuesdays. We have our sync meetings. So if you're a community member, come and give us your opinions and give us your ideas. And yeah, we'll take it and run. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. And yeah, I'll try and figure out how to get the recording of this available to you as well.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a great night, everybody. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.